Hi guys, and welcome back to another episode of RadCast. This is going to be our first video pod with a guest on, and we certainly picked someone worthy of the occasion, as we have Dr. Paul McCoubrie back on to tell us about his new book, More Rules of Radiology, which is the sequel to his critically acclaimed first book, The Rules of Radiology. So as if 50 rules weren't enough, we now have another 50 rules which we can miserably fail to adhere to. But thanks for coming back on the pod, Paul. Can you just reintroduce yourself to those of our listeners that don't know you or who haven't listened to our first episode, which I believe was recorded in June 2021, for anyone who wants to go back and listen to that?
It's a very fine episode as well, although I say it myself. I'm Paul McCoubrie. I'm a consultant radiologist in Bristol. And I've just completed 20 years in post there, so that makes me feel very old.
Oh, wow. What an achievement.
Absolutely. Congratulations.
It's more by default, to be honest, guys. It really is.
So I'm going to come clean straight away on this one. This is actually our second attempt at recording this because we got through the whole first episode and were let down by the tech. Recorded a great episode, if I don't say so myself, and then the videos failed to render. So here we are again. I was in mourning for a few days after the last attempt at our lost episode, but Paul has very graciously agreed to come on and give it another go. So thank you very much for that, and fingers crossed it'll work this time. We're going
better this time. It's going to be better.
I don't know about it. It'd be hard to beat the first episode. That's why it's so soul destroying. I don't think I can give another performance as good as that, but we'll give it a go. But yeah, no matter what happens on this one, we're going to put something out, even if it's us three just sitting in silence. It's going to go out. So yeah, but we've gone back to basics.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, and on the last one, we had Mohammed with me, because Jamie was busy gallivanting around the Middle East, but he's available again today. So we're back to the old dream team. So at least we have one new person in the conversation who's not going to be making all the same jokes that they made last time.
Yeah, I'll try and bring some fresh enthusiasm to the discussion. I'll see what I can do about that. So Paul, congratulations on book number 2, volume 2 of the Rules of Radiology. Completing one book is something that, the majority of people don't actually ever get around to doing. They say, I think I'm going to do it. Maybe I'll write a book, then they get around to it. But then to actually do 2, that's a phenomenal achievement. So did you find the second one easier to write than the first, or how was the process compared to the first time around?
Oh, definitely easier. So you think about it, writing comes. It's not an easy thing to sort of express yourself that way, but the more you do, the better you get at it. It's like exercising a muscle. There's no mystery about that. But it was always going to be kind of 2 books because there was always 100 rules. So, and when I set out writing it, I realized that if it was all in one book, it'd just be too big, too long. So, and it would take me 4 years to write. I thought, I can't just sit and write for 4 years without. So I had to break it into 2 books. That was always going to be the way. But yeah, definitely easier. Second book, and it's quite nice to be sort of not be a 1 book wonder. Sort of.
It wasn't a fluke.
It wasn't just a fluke the first time.
Yeah.
But it's 2, and that's it. Because I think I'll probably end up getting divorced if I announce there was any third book like that. It's a very solo occupation, is writing. It just takes so long, and by necessity you have to do it on your own in the quiet. So it's not really.
Yeah, that's quite disciplined then about sort of shutting yourself away and saying, right, I'm now allocating this time to committing to more writing. Yeah,
especially when you're working full time, doing calls, got family commitments and all sorts of things. So yeah, it was. I mean, a lot of it was between the hours of 9 and 12 at night, just when the day is done and you go, you say, right, I'm off to the study again. Again, she says, yes, again.
So before we get on to the second book, how was the first book received in the end?
Yeah, I was pleasantly surprised. When I set off writing it, I didn't think it would get. I thought I'd get some traction just because sort of the original website got the blog that I based it all on had got a fair bit of attention. I thought I might sell maybe a couple hundred books. In my dream, 600. I thought 600 in the first 2 years, whereas it sold.
Number of radiologists in the country, number of radiologists.
Number of friends I can arm by it. But actually, it sold in the first 2 years. It sold 1,200 books. So I was really happy with that.
Wow.
Yeah, really.
Yeah. And have you had any particularly glowing or scathing reviews?
Well, there was one scathing one, and it said that this contains barely concealed sarcasm. I just thought, no, that's wrong. The sarcasm isn't concealed at all. There were lots of people who said very nice things about it. And the other thing that took me aback was I didn't realize what a sort of a global market / reach it had. So I've got emails and messages from various people, Philippines, Hawaii. There's a very nice radiologist who bought 50 copies, Australia, States, Germany. And I have to admit, I did tell you this last time, but I was not faithful to you as a podcast.
What? Oh, okay, yeah.
Really sorry.
Yeah, let's put it out.
I was interviewed by the Swedish radiologists for Röntgenpodden. Very nice gentlemen they were as well. But yeah, so
Second best radiology podcast.
One of the better, yeah, but not.
But it's funny. The book's called The Rules of Radiology, and they were surprised that there was sarcasm in it. If it wasn't sarcastic, then you'd have to be a real egomaniac to actually be decreeing the rules of radiology. I don't know what they're expecting.
Yeah, I mean, it's a difficult thing to, you don't want to be too pompous and take yourself too seriously. So there's a lot of self-depreciation in it. But it's also that what I wanted to do was sort of give guidance, I suppose, give guidance or at least give hope. And sort of, the radiology's got so many problems, both locally and globally, that, it'd be very tempting to sort of look at all of the issues that we face and think, but what I've tried to do is sort of give answers, give solutions. This is the problem, and this is how you might go around sort of solving, or at least if you can't solve it, ameliorate it or make it better. So, in many ways, I think that they're both sort of they're books of hope. That's my hope. That's my that's what I set out to do. And I sort of try and give practical help as well as having a bit of fun and telling jokes and poking fun at myself and others.
Have you got a copy of it in the registrar room in the department where you work? You just put that in front of everyone on induction day.
Also, you're reading.
Yeah. Have a look at it.
And it's, there was arm twisting, there was bullying, quite old fashioned sort of, you will try. So, no, the trainees at Southmead have humoured me very well. So bless them. Yes.
One of the ARCP requirements is proof of purchase.
I could have a downloaded David Little. Not a bad thought. Thank you.
And obviously, everyone, the people that are going to be most up to date on the book will be the people that you're working with closely. So, did you find the colleagues that you work with after they'd read the book? Did you see any changes in practice in the department?
No. So there's two things. One, that generally my colleagues are very, very good at keeping me grounded. So all I can say is they just gently took the piss at pretty much everything. Another book, Paul. What's this one about? Not more rules, is it? So it was it's keep your ego in check very much. But the other thing is that the slight paradox of this book is that those who read it are the people who least need to read it. So the people who read it are generally reflective, self-aware, thinking, intelligent, kind, and beautiful people all around, really. No, dead serious, that there are people out there who are stuck in ruts of maladaptive behaviour for various reasons. The archetypal grumpy radiologist and many other sort of cliched radiologists who are all out there that might benefit from. But that's the problem, you see. If you don't have insight into these things, then it doesn't matter what you read or what you're told or what you think. You're not necessarily going to change. What I hope my books will do is that that'll sort of set a tone for maybe the younger guys coming through. So they are specifically aimed at younger registrars coming through, younger consultants who are looking at this great world of radiology out there and thinking, how does this all work? How does it fit together? And the hope is that it'll help them and provide guidance as well as having a bit of a laugh at the same time.
Do you feel that you have to sort of be on your game all the time now? You're now more accountable because you put this out there and people are waiting for you to slip up.
Oh, totally. Yeah. But it also, it's a great conversation starter. So people would said, so I was in Belfast on Saturday night, speaking to the Ulster Radiological Society, very fine regional society there, giving an after-dinner speech. And I was talking to them about this sort of thing. And one of the guys was saying, well, just the other day I was quoting one of your rules. And of course, my ego went sort of like this. And he said, yeah, it was perfect. Now, I'm not going to tell you which one it was because it was all a little bit confrontational, shall we say. So not my interaction, but their interaction where they
right, okay.
The one about pigs in the mud and things like that. But
right. Okay.
Anyway, but yeah, when people sort of say, "Oh, I read your book and I quoted it the other day," I mean that's very flattering.
You said that these rules were based on some writing you did for the BMJ. You used to just release a few rules at a time in your own blog, was it? And then over time you accumulated 100 of them.
That's right. So the first, I had a blog for yonks, and I did these as a kind of a bit of an exercise at first, and then the more you find these things, the more that they sort of come at you. So the ones that I'd sort of heard from other people and sayings and aphorisms, and then the more you say these to people, the more they tell you, oh, I heard this one from such and such. So before I knew it, I had loads of them. And the first 40 were quite sort of random, really. But I put those into a blog, and then each one with little sentences explaining it, the aphorism and then the explanation. And that was 2013. And then that made it into the RCR newsletter as like a double spread. And so you were probably not in radiology at that stage.
Not quite, no. Just finishing med school. Make you feel...
Okay, so 2013, this double spread in the RCR newsletter. It was the centerfold, if you like. And it actually got put up in quite a few sort of, CT scanner rooms or red rooms and things like that. So it had a bit of a, it went a bit viral at that stage.
Viral, oh yeah.
Yeah. Well, that blog has had kind of nearly 1 million hits. So it's been sort of reasonably popular and enduringly so. And so I did those 40 and then that got published and I thought, I should do some more because I've got a whole load in the bank. And so I did, 2015, I did another 30 and then the last 30 were 2018. And at that stage, I knew I was going to do a book. So I the last 30 were very much filling in the gaps. For the totality of the rules so that it covered most topics in radiology.
So did you have to fit in a few more just to get to 100? You can't, 97 rules of radiology doesn't quite work, does it?
Yeah, where do you stop? You could do, 101. 101 is quite a nice round number. It's got a certain cachet. Dozen, So there are lots of ways you could continue, but I thought 100 was a nice round number and I was going to stop at that stage. But yeah, and the last sort of 10 were the kind of the filling the gaps in. So I wrote a chapter about diversity and equality and I wrote one about leadership, and I wrote about burnout, and all the things that were important to me, but I hadn't sort of covered before anywhere else.
And you obviously have a lot of ideas around the rules for radiology and how to conduct yourself as a radiologist. But as a Yorkshireman, do you have any strong opinions about any other things?
I sense a trap here. Yorkshire without strong opinions does this. That's yeah. I mean, the older you get, the more opinions you get about things. But the nice thing about writing is that you have time to go through what everyone else thinks and read. And I did so much reading for these books.
Yeah, you could
read background stuff, to read but not only what people are currently saying, but what people have said in the near past, but also the distant past. So there's a lot of wisdom out there, and a lot of it is sort of almost hidden or not accessible to the modern reader. And I love nothing more than finding ancient sources from the Bible, sources from other texts, quotes from classics that were relevant to today's world. It just shows that the stuff that we're going through now is as old as mankind itself, so as old as the human race. So yeah, we've got our current problems, but the stuff that we worry about day to day is age old, and we can use that wisdom from other people. And there's some great sort of quotes out there about how that writing actually is a way of getting your head in order, and that you can think and talk about things, but until you've written it all down and made sort of coherent and logical sort of text out of it, actually it really sorts your head out. So did that 100 times the last 5 years, and as a result, I've got it's really straightened my head out about a whole load of things. But also, I've sort of put some stuff out there for other people, sort of, and options or choices. This, you can do it this way, you can do it that way, and this is what certain people think, and that's what this one. And if I were you, this is the way I would do it. So I've hoped to give us a fairly balanced approach to these things. But at the same time, not making it too heavy, because I think sometimes these things can be very, very earnest and as a result dull. So I try to keep it light and frothy, but at the same time, providing a broad range of guidance and thoughts and notions, and different ways of looking at things that you might not have thought of before.
Absolutely. So we've had the pleasure of reading a copy of the book, which you sent us a PDF, so thank you for that. So like last time, we thought we'd go through and pick out a few rules that really resonated with us and just pick your brains on them a bit more and see if you've got anything to add on them. So I will start. So the first rule I wanted to ask you about is rule number 52, don't rush a report. And I picked this rule because it's so simple and effective if you stick to it, but then it's also surprisingly hard to follow. I think I told you this last time. A few weeks ago now, I was doing some hot reporting. It gets to about 10 minutes before 5 o'clock, and you think, okay, I'm just gonna pick up this extra CT scan just to help out the on-call. I'll be able to get it done in 10 minutes, easy peasy. And then by the end, the time sort of creeping towards 5, and then I sort of had to finish it quite quickly because I had to get a train, not because I'm a radiologist and I like to leave at 5 on the dot. But I thought I'd got away with it. But the next day, as a conscientious person, I thought I'd just go back and check that report because I did finish it a bit quickly. And it was all reading well. And then I got to the conclusion and I'd numbered the points in the conclusion because there was quite a lot to say. And when I was numbering the points, I put the number 3 twice. So it was 1, 2, 3, 3, 5. And it's such a small mistake. I thought I nearly got away with it, but at the same time, it's just like, oh God, it's just so irritating because it just, as a perfectionist, it makes the rest of the report too a bit. It's just irritating. So yeah, you can't if you rush, you are going to make mistakes, no matter how. You just will.
Yeah, absolutely. There's no argument there. And we've all been there. And if you haven't been there, you will. And if you haven't made a massive howler, you haven't made one yet. So, it's a no-brainer. But I guess the other point that I was making with this rule is that it's the notion about that two things. One, that the amount of time it takes to do a report is just the way it is. You should never compare yourself to anyone else or any external thing. So as soon as you start comparing your reporting speed to someone else, you're on a losing wicket there. You've got to. It's individual to you, to the environment you're in, to the scan complexity, to the previous, to the history. It's so individual. So whilst you can average how long a scan will take you to report, and average how long scans take for the whole department to report, how long an individual scan is a variable feast. And one of the things that I've found that as I've got older and therefore faster is that most scans, to be honest, nowadays can get through really quickly. And, the older I get, the faster I get, and I'm probably 4 times faster than I was when I was a new consultant. But also you pick up minutiae that you would have missed, 10, 15 years ago. So, you do get better with age. And that's why, older radiologists are like gold dust, and we really need to keep hold of them. But what can happen if you rush is, your report suffers. You don't tend to miss things, but you can as well. But it's your report suffers. Your report, the flow of your report, the content of it, the grammar, the order, the logic. And I've seen some. We've all seen terrible reports, usually from St Elsewhere's, or from people you don't know. But we've seen them, and you just think to yourself, is this because they were rushing, or they're interrupted, or is it actually because they didn't know, or they're not very good, or whatever? They're sort of, you get used to a certain standard report, and sometimes I can't tell. Is it because they were just having a bad day, interrupted lots of times, computer wasn't working, VR was hanging up, or was it that actually they're actually not very good at this particular thing, they're at their depth, or they haven't been trained, or whatever? So I think for quality purposes, you don't rush, because the quality of your reports will suffer, and the accuracy and all of that. But yeah, it makes you look bad.
Yeah.
If your reports come out garbled, full of typos that you haven't checked, full of numbers that are wrong, then it makes you. If people judge you by your reports, and you'll have done this, you'll have had somebody come up to you, I dare say, going, "Nice to meet you, never met you, love your reports."
Yeah.
So people, people judge radiologists by the reports because it's your primary output. So you may be the loveliest person who does the greatest cardiac MR reports, but if you only do that for cardiologists, then and they already know you, then you're not going to meet on. But the more reports you put out there, the more people get to know you by your reports. Certainly GPs and in big hospitals, very much, where there's hundreds of consultants, you're just not going to meet these people. So I think if you care about your reputation, then don't rush. Take your time. And if it's complex, slow down. And the longer you spend on the report, often the shorter it is, bizarrely.
So do you make a distinction between people who are just fast reporters and people sort of rushing? Because there are some people who do just bang out reports, and they do the job, but they're probably on a service-wide perspective quite good to get the scans done, but maybe a bit low on the detail.
That's a tricky one, because I think I think people who bang out reports, there's people who report each one fast, and that doesn't necessarily correlate with how good somebody is. And that actually I refer to in a later rule, the one on chronometry, looking at time. So you get people who are just very, very good, and that's why they can get through it. You get people who are a bit slapdash, and that's why they get through it. The other thing that is also a little bit, I think, about when it comes to reporting is about whether you get in the zone and whether you're interrupted and what kind of brain you are. So I used to have a lovely colleague, John Howarth, long retired now, 10 years retired. But he used to report about 40,000 plain films a year. And it's unthinkable, isn't it? I know. But he used to sit there. And he just used to sit there for hours, just bang, next, bang, next. Not particularly fast, but he'd just sit there for hours and do this. And I've got a couple of colleagues like this who are just absolute machines. They're very good. But they can just sit there uninterrupted for hours and just be banging through things in a way that can't, tried. I can do it in bursts, then I'm going to have a coffee or chat, and then I come back and do another burst. So I think overall productivity over a period of time is not necessarily related to seniority or ability, but an ability, speed of reporting is, again, a variable feast between experience and standards, honestly.
So you did mention Rule 79 there, trust in chronometry. So ultimately, it's the brisk and steady radiologist who is the ideal one.
Absolutely, yeah.
So then, do you think that the mentality of speed reporting has come from, I suppose, volume would be one thing, clinician demand would be another, and then perhaps outsourcing metrics that they're working towards? There's a few like different factors that probably come into play in terms of putting pressure on people to increase their output.
Yeah, totally. This is in no way. So there's always pressure. Whoever, wherever organisation you work in, where you get paid, wherever country you work in, there's always pressure to get through it, because there's virtually always more work than there is people to do it. So, and I think only a sort of only somebody who's emotionally completely blind wouldn't recognise when there's more pressure, when there's more stuff to be done. That said, most hospitals have divorced the ability to report things versus ability to scan things. If you go to, we used to, this is going back and showing my age now, but about 15 years ago, we used to have CT lists, okay, where a radiologist would sit in or next to the scanner, and they would report everything that came off the scanner. And often or not, in smaller hospitals, it'd be a single CT, single MR, and you just report everything that came off it. Everything got reported the same day. Great fun, right? But workload was matched because you had people hot reporting it that afternoon. It was all done, inpatient, outpatient, everything. And then about 15 years ago, it kind of like, we're going to start running in the evening without radiologists, and we're going to start running at weekends, and we're going to subspecial, and we're going to have, and it started divorcing, and that happened all over the country, and all of a sudden you had this complete disconnect between scanning capacity and radiologist reporting capacity. So everyone was put to work lists, and then the manager went, yay, and before it was completely divorced, and so they just piled it up high. So there's always too much work to do in the UK, particularly. Hence outsourcing. We're spending, what was it, 260 million last year on outsourcing for NHS. Enough to buy another 4,000 consultants. Yeah. But anyway, so I think that the pressure to report is in the UK, in the NHS for sure, is always self-generated, because there's always always far too much to do and not enough time to do it. So I think you have to work at a steady rate that you feel comfortable with, that doesn't need to rushing. At the same time, you don't want to work too slow, because if you work too slow and you're sort of nitpicking about this and you spend an hour constructing this useful report, your colleagues are tearing their hair out because can you get on with it? There's too much work, and you're sitting there, faffing. So I think there's a sort of acceptable thing, and that's why I think the college has stated that they don't want to put out too much guidance on this, because radiologists just report at different speeds. Same people, same scans, and one person will take 3 times slower than the other, and that's fine. So I think, that it's a complex topic, but I think as an individual radiologist, don't rush, don't report at a pace or a speed that feels uncomfortable, because you'll come a cropper and you'll look like an idiot.
I think last time when we were discussing this rule, we spent about 5 minutes slamming teleradiologists, which is quite funny.
No, that's, you've got that wrong. I would never do anything like that.
No, it's because Jamie's here now. I don't want him to get away without having to sort of answer his field. But do you feel there's a slight difference in the care that you perceive from some teleradiology reports versus internal reports? Not a leading question, Paul.
No, it's all. Well, so they're variable, like every radiology report. And it tends to be that the older teleradiologists, you can just tell without having to look at the GMC number at the bottom, just by the way the fluidity of the report. So I think, the younger guys are sometimes not quite there yet, but they're all got FRCR. They're all CCT'd in the UK. So that, they are of a certain known standards. I think there's a couple of things that is different about teleradiology reports that the younger guys may be a bit more overtly influenced by. The old ones are much more confident in their own skin and don't give that much attention to it. And what it is the metrics that most, probably I haven't got enough time to discuss this, Jamie, but it's the metrics upon which quality is judged in the teleradiology world. And most, whether it's a 10% double reporting, or whether it's a peer review, or whether it's but it's a lot thing. And again, I cover this in one of the rules about false positives. Is that if you're punished for missing things out, or not, when I say punished, it's flagged up and you're given a hard time about it. Not get punished, but if you have that, and so that's stuff you miss. So that's the misses, the false negatives. And if you're punished for not communicating things urgently, then inevitably, but you're not punished or taken to task for false positives. So overcalling, you're not punished for being vague or indecisive. Then naturally, that will make people who are less confident in the reporting style, they'll veer towards over-inclusivity of findings. They'll put in a lot more false positives or vagueness or less defined things. A lot more suggest discussion, MDT, suggest rescan, unclear possibility, correlation or whatever. So I think whereas the older guys don't do that because they're much more confident in their own skin. So I think until we start addressing false positives and hedging and vagueness, then I think the younger teleradiologists will inevitably, you can't do anything about it, inevitably they're going to veer that way.
I'm just pulling.
I would say, yeah,
I mean to attack.
No, I do agree with what you're saying. I think that if I was to look broadly at the feedback from trusts, not to me personally, to the whole group, then the main categories would be relating to not looking at prior imaging and not and recommending unnecessary extra investigations. Those are kind of probably the two main gripes. It's not necessarily like clinical misses. I think obviously it's inevitable that things will get missed, but those I'd say are the two broad categories of what generate the most feedback from customers. Repeated things where they're saying, why are we getting an MRI scan for this? It's unnecessary. And I think, I agree with you that it does perhaps. Maybe people think they have to be more defensive if it's not somewhere where they're working. And I also think that, and I know that you touch on the concept of being paid per unit of activity in another rule, but I think that if you want to maximize your efficiency, then there's obvious areas where you can start first. In terms of like optimizing how PACS works, various different things regarding your workflow, making sure that you're working at a time when you know that you're personally working at your most efficient. But then there comes a point where you've done all of that, but there's some people who would then perhaps think, well, how can I go further? How can I squeeze another couple of reports out in an hour? And that's when I think you get to the point where the reports might start to get more generic or lacking in detail. Essentially, you get to a point where you have no choice but to say less. That's the only way you're going to be able to save more time, is by saying less. And I think that's a line that some people would perhaps cross, whereas some people are not willing to cross. I guess that comes down to motivation as well.
I think it's also, you get better at being less vague as you get older. So you feel much more comfortable with decision making about indeterminate findings. And, these things are difficult and they do take years to get good at them. And I think particularly if you're seeing this day in, day out, you get very good at it, And I think if you're younger and you haven't seen quite as much stuff, handling uncertainty is intrinsically difficult. And handling uncertainty well is really hard. So, I empathise, and I work with a whole load of younger colleagues and we're all there for each other. Whereas if you're, teleradiologist sat at home, you can't just lean around the corner and go, "Oh, Paul, come and have a look at this," sort of thing, which you have on site. So, and like you say, there's that pressure of must get on because otherwise I'm not getting paid. So I think it is difficulty. It is difficult handling uncertainty and vague findings and uncertain findings. But, that's why we get paid. That's where we get the big bucks, right?
That's true.
So, right, next rule number 56, don't shoot the messenger. So I feel like with this rule, you were looking down, almost judging the rest of your radiology colleagues and just imploring us to kind of be better, be more empathetic, don't be dicks, essentially. It was quite depressing to read. And you mentioned a survey in this chapter where it said that radiologists are the third least popular specialty in hospital after orthopods and cardiologists, which is not great company to be in. And I feel, slightly, I take that quite personally, actually. So yeah, I'm surprised at that. But what did you mean by this? Don't shoot the messenger.
Well, most of us do duty radiology sessions, right, where you're at the front gate, and you're sort of, our role has changed over the years. We very much used to be sort of, gatekeeper, non-job pass sort of thing. That's all kind of gone now. Now it's just weeding out the stuff that doesn't make sense. And you scan most of it because it's easier to just scan it than it is to have a 15-minute discussion. But I think historically, radiologists have been grumpy. And I know not every radiologist, if I can use a rather tired trope, but there's enough of us out there that are grumpy and do give junior doctors a hard time that it rubs off on the rest of us. It varies from hospital to hospital, and it varies within group to group. So there are definitely some hospitals where they have a really great reputation, lovely, friendly, and there are some where they're absolute psychopaths, and so it varies hugely, and it varies within groups. So certain subgroups, I'm going to be a bit more tactful here and not specify which subgroups, but certain subgroups in radiology have worse reputations than others, and like you say, it only takes one subgroup to tar the rest of the department. So I think it's this notion really that we as radiologists have got a sort of an image problem, and it's based on a fact, and it's based on some people taking it out on the junior doctors, whereas in fact actually it's not their fault. They're just doing their job, and if you're taking it out on them, then it reflects actually more on you than it does on them. So, it partly goes back to some of the very earliest rules in the first book about smiling and keeping a cool and basic behave professionally. But this is very much a kind of a thing about being kind on the shop floor when you're being a duty radiologist, and do this very, very specifically because you often when you're a duty radiologist, you're dealing with some of the sickest patients. And you're also usually dealing with the most junior member of the team. So you've got this paradox, really. You've got these people coming to you for help. And nowadays, it's more kind of, can you vet this scan, which is like rubber stamps. No. We don't do vetting, we do discussion. But anyway, and that you're dealing with the most junior person who often doesn't know the patient very well, and these patients are sick. So, this is at the coal face. This is where we make the most difference in virtually all of radiology, diagnostic radiology. We're making this. So you've got to get this right. You've got to get the front door, the duty radiologist, the interaction there between junior doctors and other clinicians. Get this right, because if we don't get that right, then, what are we doing?
Mm.
It's the major point of that rule.
I was going to say, I think that it's an opportunity to teach the junior doctors who are coming to you and they don't really know. You can educate them about what makes a good referral, why you need certain bits of information, as opposed to just shooting them down and saying no. And I think that then if they have a good experience having one discussion with you and they learn something from it, then the whole department then benefits, because it means that next time they come back down, they're going to have more information. It's going to be a more straightforward discussion.
Totally. Valuable. I mean, it's arguable we're not there to educate. We're there to just, but at the same time, it can be an opportunistic thing to say, right, to tell, but a little bit also about their clinical method as well. So if they're coming down just going, well, I don't know, the boss wanted the scan, you go, well, yeah, I need a bit more than that. And so can I suggest next time you come down, and these things are age old, aren't they? They haven't changed since I was in short medical trousers, really.
Do you think you can institutionalize kindness? Like, should we all be doing mandatory compassion e-learning once a year?
Wouldn't that be an awful thing? Can you imagine? Oh, I've got to do mandatory updating kindness. And everyone would grow to hate it and get paradoxically more unkind.
Yeah.
I've always been struck that as radiologists, we never get taught to communicate. Yeah. All of the curriculum is kind of pretty. I think there's one bit on it about reporting, but there's nothing about clinician radiologist communication. This is a vital clinical skill, and it's grossly overlooked about how best to do these things. We talk about indeed that the FRCR is very much about technical descriptions of radiographs and how to communicate these to clinicians in both the clinical discussion and MDT, and we do all that. But we don't actually have any notion about the other 75% of our job, which is actually talking to other radiologists, other radiographic staff, helper secretaries. How do you have a meaningful consultation with somebody coming to ask for a scan? And we just don't do that. So I personally would be into, what are the recipes for success here? If you're going to be a GP, you go and get videoed, having consultations with patients. They're not in that, but there's whole books, massive theories, and watch. And you have to know all about, the works of Roger Neighbour and all these people, these massive communicators. I personally would like this to be a thing that radiologists do, and how you have an effective, because that's the thing about it, effective and efficient and kind and compassionate thing. I mean, if only all the registrars bought and read my books, then they'd all know these things. Because it's little things like, introducing yourself. And our registrars are very good at this. They'll always, introduce yourself on the phone. And if they don't introduce themselves back, you just say, sorry, I'm Paul McCoubrie, and you are. And they, oh, right, yeah, I'm Fred, F1 in urology. People forget these niceties, and I think we just need to keep reinforcing them and keep doing the basics. Introduce yourself, be kind, be welcoming. I always get a chair and put it next to the desk that say I was duty radiologist for 3 hours this morning, and I got a chair next to mine. So when I said, when I'm just in the middle of something, I just say, and I'm just in the middle of something, they can see I'm in the middle of something. I just come and sit down, and then they come and they just go, and sit in the dark, air-conditioned room, nice comfy chair. But the slight problem there is you get this reputation, and then you get the ED physicians coming in one by one for their therapy with Uncle Paul. So they'll come and sit. I say, yeah. So
not charging.
And I think being that welcoming person who's kind It takes no effort. It really does. And before you know it, you're actually other people look at this and they mimic it, and you set the tone. I think, and it's really important for senior people. And I am now, one of those senior people, age 53, that I'm sort of, and I hope to set that tone in the department about, expectations about how things should run, and that kindness is the default, and very clear basic standards of communication, like introducing yourself every time.
So now there's a few rules I wanted to group together, because there's a common thread that runs through them. So that's rule number 53, prognostication is not an indication. Rule number 60, sorry, that's rule number 59, as you knew. I was just testing you there. Rule number 59, prognostication is not an indication. Rule number 63, don't scan instead of talking. And rule number 64, never scan the dying, which I think was a particularly well-written and very poignant chapter, definitely worth reading. And so basically the common thread through these 3 rules is that clinicians can be quite risk-averse, some would say cowardly, and or just a bit, I'm being too critical here, clueless sometimes, and basically do too many pointless scans for futile reasons, or just basically for the sake of it, essentially. And I do find that now more and more I report scans and I just think, what is the point of doing this scan? What are we achieving here? This is definitely not in the best interest of the patient or the limited resources of the NHS, and it's quite a depressing situation, some of the scans we end up reporting.
Yeah. I think there's a couple of things just to sort of clarify there. I think that firstly, it's now easy to get a scan. Okay. So radiologists aren't gatekeepers. There are more scanners out there. So it is easier. And there is a notion about induced demand. And because scans are easier to get and expectations, there is just because the scans are easy to get makes it actually drive demand in some way. It's a weird thing. You put in an extra scanner, your workload goes up by 20%. It's not that there are 20% more scans needing doing necessarily. So we are a victim of our own success, and it is a weird set of economics, and I don't understand. I've had it explained to me, but I don't really understand about this induced demand, but it's definitely a thing. I think the thing is the milieu has changed, even in the last 10 years. I think the expectations of patients, the expectations of others, that these are now, what is a normal rate of scanning is reset, gone up. So I think, it's not just them, it's everybody.
Yeah.
And then I think the other thing is that there is now, it's a change philosophy. So, I was very much brought up in the strict clinical method. Okay, so it's history, it's examination, investigations, and they were done very, very strictly in that order. And I had my boss, when I was a houseman, would drub this into us, and we'd be like a metronome, and this was the way things happened. Now, not so much. History presented complete, investigation.
Yeah.
And then, work backwards. And I think inevitably it's a very efficient way of doing it. And I think lastly, the other thing is that there is this weird notion about expected positive pickup rates. So if you look at, say, CTPAs, cancer scans looking for cancer, okay. The epidemiologists have worked out that if your pickup rate for scanning for cancer is 3% or above, then it's worthwhile doing. Now, if you set to most radiologists say to you, so your initial scan is 97% negatively predictive, then that's really quite depressing. And you do run into a massive problem then. If you're over-investigating, then if you're investigating with a low pickup rate, for example, aortic aneurysm, a dissection, classic one, everyone's paranoid about missing it, and therefore we scan loads and loads and loads of normal aortas. And I was hearing from a colleague who works in a centre where they've got really a threshold for scanning, and 2 things happen there. One, loads of people get scans for things that aren't dissections. So they pick up loads of cholecystitis, loads of pancreatitis for things that are, and having the wrong sorts of scans for those, and sometimes being missed if you just scan their thoracic aorta. And I think the second is when you actually do get a dissection, everyone's expecting it not to be a dissection so much that actually they get missed. See, the paradox of this low incidence population, that all the positive findings are largely false positive, and even the ones that are detected are missed as well. So it really changes the way that we work when you're in this really low incidence population. As a result, we have to look really hard at what we do. It's no longer thinking, yes, we need to be between 10 and 25% positives for CTPAs or Dopplers or whatever it is. But you need to think about this era of single figures percent, instance, and all the problems that create, because otherwise everything will be false positives, particularly if you're a new, young, paranoid radiologist who's reporting everything, that your output will be false positives. Particularly if you're doing a really sensitive test like PET-CT, where up to a third of patients have significant incidental findings. So yeah, this low incidence population is a real headache, and it's up to us working with clinicians to actually try and remove by default those who don't need a scan, not by individual discussion, but by protocol, by absolute clinical classification, because you've got to try and increase the instance in the population you're scanning. So it's actually just like, for example, weeding out, say for doing CT urograms, we have now stopped doing CT urograms for under 50s because they don't have upper tract cancers. We've done it, proved it. For CT urograms, not doing CT urograms non-visible hematuria. We did 1,000 patients, not a single patient, non-visible hematuria had an upper tract T6C. So you can do this by working out which categories it is. It takes a lot of work.
There was a culture of doing, like chest abdo-pelvis CT in unprovoked DVT.
Yeah.
That was something else that just
15 years. Yeah, took 15 years. But mentioned because of a nice guideline, who they put a rather equivocal phrase in there, consider, right? And therefore everyone said, oh, it's a nice guideline, must do. No, consider is, you don't have to, but you can if you want. But what happened was we had 15 years of people doing endless CT abdo-pelvises for unprovoked DVTs before eventually somebody did a proper big study in the New England Journal of Medicine saying, this is a complete waste of time. Everyone, okay. Well, and then it took radiologists like me just going, right, we're going to stop doing this. And suggest that in your hospital and went, okay, fair enough. And then suggest it then to the wider cancer network. And now Cancer Network will stop doing it as well. So yeah, you can push it forward, but it takes a lot of action. It takes a lot of work.
Yeah, I think radiologists are also guilty of being quite defensive, and maybe we need to be braver in just sometimes saying no to scans. Paradoxically, I feel that sometimes it's easier for radiologists because we're removed from the situation to sometimes think, does this scan really need to be done, and make the clinician think again. I don't know if when you have the patient there in front of you and there's pressure from family and various other things, that the easy option is to just do the scan, and sometimes you just need the radiologist to say, do we really need to do that? And I think
I've got personal theory on this. I've got personal theory on this, and that this day and age, actually radiologists saying no to scans because you disagree with their reasoning is a road to pain. Weed out the ones that bear no resemblance of cognitive thought. Yeah, doesn't make sense. They've asked for the wrong thing. Yeah, or ones where it's scrambled thinking. Like, no, I don't really follow what you're going. Because those are the ones where you can just go. Most of those are just like, oh, sorry, that's the wrong thing, or oh, really? I didn't know that sort of thing. Whereas the rest of them, it's like you're just a world of pain if you start fighting about individual scans. So just weed out the ones that definitely don't need doing, and the rest, whatever. Yeah, come on, straight through.
Hopefully, someone will be able to. I mean, in fact, there has recently been a study published looking at the whole body traumas in the silver traumas, the elderly patients. But I don't think it was too much of a large. It wasn't really that much of a large sample size. So hopefully, that will be the next thing that can go in the bin along with the abdo-pelvis for the DVT. We can pray, can't we? We can hope.
So the next rule, rule number 76, we're getting there. Radiology should be fun. So I suppose it's good. This is a good rule because it's good to be reminded of this sometimes because it can be easy to forget with all of the pressures that are on us in the day-to-day job. But radiology is actually quite fun, and it could be a lot worse. When we started radiology, the lead reg at the time basically told us in one of the teaching sessions, he said, no matter how bad it gets in radiology, never forget how bad it was in the wards and how it could be worse, essentially. So, yeah, it's good to maintain that perspective.
Totally. I mean, we do have a relatively charmed medical life. You know, we have comfy chairs, air-conditioned rooms, you know, with, you know, if you're a diagnostic radiologist, you know, there's not much gore, at least it shouldn't be. It's all very sanitized. It's all, you know, it's not physically demanding as diagnostic radiologist. Intervention is a different case on both of those. But for diagnostic radiologist, you know, it's you know, it's like playing Sherlock Holmes every day. It's like, you know, using all the clues to work out the puzzles, and so this should feel like fun. It's one of the, and it is. I think if you bear it down to it's bare bones and get away of all of the baggage that comes with it. Actually, that side of radiology is fun. You know, it's the sort of that cut and thrust of making, you know, trying to draw all these clues together, and I that fundamentally, if that doesn't appeal to you, then you probably shouldn't be a diagnostic radiologist, really. But I think that bit is fun, and we are, you know, my good friend Barry Kelly came out of this quote about, you know, medicine are radiologists are medicine's dolphins. And that, you know, radiology is the warm waters of medicine, and, you know, like dolphins, we frolic and play, but actually we've got big brains, so we're frolic playing because we enjoy it and we know we get it. But I think when it stops being like that, then you got to think, hang on a minute, is this me? Have I fallen out of love with that? You know, the thrill of the diagnostic chase, or is it where I'm working, or is it my mental health or my physical health, or is it actually the whole hospital I work in? So, you know, I put that in there just to remind people that certainly when you get to a certain stage of your career, that it sometimes does feel like a bit of a chore, and that happens to various people at various times. But remind people that actually it should feel like fun. So
yeah, I think it's very true. If you're not enjoying radiology, obviously everyone has their reasons for getting into it in the first place. And if you find you're at a point where you're not enjoying it, then you have to look at what are the other factors that could be at play there. Is it the environment that you're working in? Is it the system that you're working in? And what other options are there that are out there? Because there's so many alternative things that you can do now.
And most people have, you know, portfolio careers these days. It's quite normal, you know, I have 10-session NHS job plan. I do work some PET CT for Alliance, and I do some private work. So, you know, that's not unusual. And I think a lot of people now are coming out as registrars wanting that variation, working at home, working in the hospital, a bit of this, bit of that, keeps it fresh and keeps it flexible.
Okay. Rule number 81, AI is overhyped. So you start this rule with a quote, and I don't know if this is yours. It does sound like it's something you come up with. Whenever anyone says AI will replace radiologists, you have my permission to beat them with their own shoe. And then you mentioned the notorious Professor Geoffrey Hinton in the opening paragraph, who he's the guy that every radiologist loves to hate. But he's notorious for saying in 2016 that people should stop training radiologists because essentially it would be useless in a few years. Fast forward nearly 10 years and we're all still in the job, and training numbers they can't go up fast enough. But then he's also recently just won a Nobel Prize for his contributions to machine learning. So he's obviously done something right in his time. But you are fairly cynical or critical when it comes to AI, at least the overhyped elements of AI. Where do you see its role in radiology in the coming years?
Yes, I respect for Jeff Hinton. He's just like anyone else. You know, it's very difficult to predict, particularly about the future, isn't it? That was my quote about the shoes, by the way. Yeah, it was me. But I think if you put your head in the sand saying blah 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 blah, that's not you know, I think that's a mistake. I think he did start a hype wave, and he is to blame for starting that. I think others have aided and abetted it, but that hype wave has been very damaging for radiology, because the narrative to the politicians and the senior bosses is that we won't need radiologists, so they've not put money into funding new training posts very clearly. And people have been chucking money at AI and machine learning. What was the IBM's Watson? 5 billion did it cost?
Yeah.
Scrapped, gone, nothing came out of it. So, and how many startups in AI, and how many just disappear again? So, people are chucking money at it, and you've got to, because it's the only way you'll make it thing. But it's much more complicated than most of them realize. And to actually make money out of something and make products that work is again a different thing. My point about AI is that fundamentally it will become useful, and it will become the radiologist's hand servant. Make life easy for us. And I think as long as you look at it that way, then there's nothing to fear from it. The AI companies are not going to look at scans and produce signed off reports. It's just not going to happen for a long, long time, because fundamentally, if you look at everything across all industries that have elements of machine learning or AI, so whether that's self-driving cars or whatever, that everyone is really, really, really nervous about letting machines make the final decision about anything. So there's always a human sign-off at the end of it all. And that will be true for radiology for decades, because they won't let the verified report, which is the final opinion, go out without a human on it. Because therefore transfer the risk to the company that does this. So I think as long as we look at, and radiologists should have a role in developing this, because without that, then these are just tech guys who are just trying to sell us products. So we should be having instances. We say what we really want is really good voice recognition, like really good. We want to make our workflows efficient. And use AI to do that. Look at the low-hanging fruit first. I don't want something that can report a CT. I don't want something that's going to, report a chest X that I can do in 2 seconds. I might want AI to say, look at these ones first, Paul, because these are abnormal. Flag these up for early reporting. Cool, like that. That makes us more productive, more efficient, makes it more effective. But I think, we've got as long as people see it that way around, this should hopefully be helpful and make us more productive. I think as soon as it affects our efficiency and productivity, people just won't use it. It's very straightforward. We've had this before with several other computer things, whether it was computer-assisted detection or 3D tools. They don't add anything; they just slow you down. People just don't use them; they just drop them.
Yeah, that's very true. I think there's so many other there's so many other steps in the chain between the clinician deciding that the patient needs to have a scan to the report coming out of the other end. Totally. And there's so many other areas that can be better influenced by using AI rather than the focus being on an algorithm that can produce the report. Right. There's other inefficiencies in the system that could be improved first.
Totally. If you look at everybody's the fights in the NHS, so 85% of England uses CRIS as their RIDS software, and notoriously doesn't play well with voice recognition. And I know every hospital I know of who uses this software, it's 85%, so it's 100 and something trusts are having the same battle as everyone else with voice recognition. And you just think to yourself, hang on, why are you plowing millions of pounds into AI, network, radiology, this, that, and the other, when actually what radiologists need and want is decent voice recognition? Because once you get it, it's like
productivity, productivity
shoots to the roof, and it's really a small thing. So I'm a great fan of low-hanging fruit basics. Look at those first before the fancy stuff. But yeah, we're not in charge.
Rule 83 now: show yourself. And this, I was amazed to read this. So you just said you've been a consultant now for 20 years, but you don't have a home reporting workstation.
I've been given one, and I set it all up, but there are problems without a hardwired one about latency issues. And every time I've tried to use it, it's just so buggy and slow. Having said all that, the way my job plan works is that I'm in the hospital every day, and I think to get it properly, you really need a whole day at home, because I think having half day and then traveling to hospital, you're wasting time. So I think it's difficult if you've got a job like mine where I'm doing lists and procedural this and MDTs there and teaching here and that. And it's very difficult to make it work for me. I think for people starting off, absolutely. For people who want that flexibility, fine. But I just don't really have a day that I can fit in home working into it. It's not that I'm a dinosaur. I love my tech, but it just doesn't. And plus, I'm a people person, gregarious. Sitting at home, it's nice and easy. You can sit there and have a coffee and stroke the cat and put the fire on and things like that. But I prefer to be in hospital. Plus, I think the more people at home, that the more pressure goes on the people in the hospital, because the visitors, the phone calls, the emails and stuff. I mean, I do want some people at home doing all the hard work, but you need some people in on the shop floor to be, the secretaries come to, can you take this phone call? Can you vet this scan? Can you do that report? This one's in clinic. Can you do that? And you need both. You need people in, people at home, and people doing them too. So it's all timetabling, but it's complex.
I think it can be quite a contentious issue if there's certain days of the week when there's more of the department that are off than other days, because then the people who are in on those days are obviously then inundated with all the extra queries that they have to deal with, so they feel as though it's a very unproductive day for them.
I think certain hospitals, on certain days, they've never, everyone went home during COVID and a lot of them just didn't come back. And I think a lot of hospitals are like this. I was hearing just on the weekend about several hospitals that were both sides of the Irish border where, they literally have, one or two people in on certain half days of the week. So yeah, there's a problem.
Okay, so I think we will leave it there. I know you have to shoot off, so and we need to leave some rules there for people to actually buy the book. So I think we've given them a good teaser there. Out of interest, is the book out in audio? Have you done an audio book version of it? Because it's written in your voice, and I think it would sound very good if you were reading it. It would add to the...
No, actually, that is what I plan to do next. So my plan next is to very much do an audio book, and I'm going to read it myself. Yeah, so I'm going to do that.
Brilliant.
Start just this side of Christmas, I think. Yeah,
that's the next project. But definitely no more books. You can promise us and your wife no more books.
Okay. No more books.
Great. Well, thanks for doing this again, Paul. It's been much appreciated. It's great to speak to you for the third time now. In the nicest possible way. I hope we never do this again. Unless, of course, you release a third book, in which case we're glad to have you on again. But yeah, that's it for the second book. So best of luck with the release, and hopefully it's as popular as the first one. And thanks again.
Thank you very much. Cheers, guys. Much
Thanks.
See you later. Bye.